Long time no see, guys. It's Mrs. Klein.
Hey, it's Mrs. Wolbrin. We're here with your second podcast for this lesson, and the same guiding question is going to apply. How did the Federalist and Republican visions for the United States differ?
Yeah, and clearly, even though the last podcast we didn't really talk about Federalists and Republicans, there definitely was a difference between Thomas Jefferson's view and Alexander Hamilton's view. Especially, at least we learned about it had to do with like the National Bank and interpreting the Constitution.
And those were the first two political parties, and we haven't said that yet either, but that is coming.
It is definitely coming. There were no political parties when George Washington became president.
Everybody wanted it.
So there you go. Okay. All right, you guys. So we are in our last podcast, we learned about decisions that were made setting up the new Republic of the United States. And here we're going to learn about how George Washington established central authority at home and then also avoided war with European powers. And we were a new nation, so it was really wise for him to kind of avoid us becoming embroiled in another war so soon at the beginning of our nation's history.
Yes. And we're going to start with talking about securing the Northwest Territory. In 1783, the Treaty of Paris, it tried to resolve the claims to the land between the Appalachian Mountains and the Mississippi River. Because remember, that Treaty of Paris, this is all our land now.
Yep.
But a few years later, trouble arose again in this area known as the Trans-Appalachian West. Spain, Britain, and United States and Native Americans each claimed parts of this area.
Spain claimed much of North America west of the Mississippi, Florida, and also the very important port of New Orleans. This port was key to trade for the American settlers in the West. The settlers carried goods to market by flatboat down the Mississippi to New Orleans. The Spanish threatened to close the port. They stirred up trouble between the white settlers and Native American groups in the Southeast.
In violation of the Treaty of Paris, the British held forts north of the Ohio River. The strongest resistance to the white settlement came from Native Americans in the Northwest Territory. They hoped to join together to form an independent Native American nation bordered by the Ohio River to the south and Canada to the north. Britain encouraged them in order to maintain its access to fur in these territories.
Okay, all right, so clearly lots of people wanted to get that land. Okay, this leads to something called the Battle of Fallen Timbers. Washington sent troops headed by Anthony Wayne to the Ohio Valley in order to secure the Northwest. The Native Americans did not have strong leadership or an overall battle plan. They were defeated by Wayne's troops in the Battle of Fallen Timbers. The British refused to help the Native Americans. This battle crushed Native American hope of keeping their land. And they ended up signing something called the Treaty of Greenville in 1795. And in that, they agreed to surrender much of present-day Ohio and Indiana to the United States government.
Yeah. Next, we're going to talk about the Whiskey Rebellion. Now, remember, with Hamilton's financial plan, he started taxing items, and one of those items was whiskey. So, a conflict arose over the government's tax on whiskey. Farmers were against the tax because whiskey and the grain it was made from were important products. Farmers could more easily carry whiskey to market than the grain it was made from. Whiskey was used by farmers as money to trade for other goods. In 1794, a group of farmers in western Pennsylvania rebelled against the tax. Washington sent an army to crush the Whiskey Rebellion. Washington showed that the government had the power and the will to enforce its laws.
So they learned some stuff from what happened in Massachusetts with Shays' Rebellion. Yeah. So whatever, strong forces. And doesn't he even come to this?
Yeah, so he actually leads this armed group along with Hamilton.
Yeah, as president of the United States, armed to come down there to show the power of the federal government.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. We also have some issues with the French Revolution. And what are we going to do? Whose side are we going to take? All right, in 1789, the French launched the French Revolution in search of liberty and equality. At first, the United States strongly supported the struggle. The struggle turned violent, however. King Louis XVI and thousands of French citizens were killed. Also, France declared war with Britain, Spain, and Holland. Britain led the fight against France. So if we said we were going to help the French, then basically we were going to be at war with Britain, Spain, and Holland.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's a huge
problem.
A big consideration.
Right. The war put the United States in an awkward position. France had been America's ally against the British. I mean, they're basically the reason we won.
We won the war, exactly.
Yeah. Also, A 1778 treaty bound France and the United States together, and many saw France's revolution as proof that the American cause was justified. Thomas Jefferson felt that a move to crush the French Revolution was an attack on liberty everywhere. Other Americans thought that British trade was too important to the American economy to risk war. As a result, Washington decided the United States would remain neutral. This meant it would not side with one country or another. Congress then passed a law forbidding Americans to help either side.
Yikes. All right. In 1792, Britain began seizing the cargoes of American ships, and this made it hard for the United States to remain neutral. So, Washington sent Chief Justice John Jay to England to persuade the British to end the seizures of American ships. Jay also tried to get them to give up their forts on the northwest frontier. News of the Battle of Fallen Timbers helped Jay convince the British to give up the forts by 1796. In Jay's treaty, the British also agreed to pay damages for American vessels they had seized. Jay's treaty was unpopular. This was mainly because he did not convince the British to open trade with the British West Indies to Americans.
In 1795, Pinckney's treaty with Spain gave Americans the right to travel freely on the Mississippi River and to store goods at the port of New Orleans without paying custom duties. Also, Spain accepted the 31st parallel as the northern boundary of Florida and the southern boundary of the United States.
All right, you guys, it brings this podcast to a close.
Yeah, take it easy.
All right. Take care, guys.